Welcome to episode 4 of Stick to Sports. I'm Brian Burrows.
And I'm Ben Diamond. Today we take a look at all things MLB.
Roll it! Core to win the American League regular season title, but could not reach the World Series. The Texas Rangers beat them in the ALDS and went on to win the World Series. This season, the Astros, the team that lost in the ALCS, are the betting favorites headed into the season to win the American League, with the retooled Bronx Bombers second favorite and the Orioles third, with the reigning champs in fourth. Ben, which squad do you think will represent the AL in the World Series?
I mean, you just mentioned them. The Texas Rangers, the reigning World Series champions. And they got better because the year before in 2022, they were not good. And they got one of those high draft picks. You see right here, Wyatt Langford, one of the top players on the team. He's looked fantastic. I mean, just the way he's hit in spring training, the way he hit last season as well. I mean, he just really bolsters this Rangers lineup. And then, of course, you have Corey Seager and Marcus Semien to round out, that top of the lineup. And then their pitchers, although they have some injuries, they still have Scherzer, they still have DeGrom. Both are hurt to start the season, but Eovaldi, John Gray, Dane Dunning, a young starting pitcher that showed a lot of promise last year. This team is full of a lot of good players. I mean, that lineup really is going to give a lot of pitchers trouble. And I mean, the pitchers do just enough to, keep them afloat.
I'm going with the Orioles. I think this young core is going to take a bigger step into their own. Adley and Gunnar going to lead this team. They have a couple more players coming up like Colton Cowser. And then you add to this the pitching core, which was good last year, got an ace. They got a Cy Young caliber player in Corbin Burns and a deal from the Brewers, and he could very easily lead this team at the top of this rotation. And now you move all those people, the 1, the 2, John Means, they move them all down. Craig Kimball's coming to be the closer, who is a very experienced guy. This team could go very far. 100 wins last year, could be even better this year.
The Atlanta Braves are coming off a 104-win season that saw them get bounced from the playoffs by the Phillies in the NLDS. With the addition of Chris Sale to the rotation and Ronald Acuna Jr. being a bona fide MVP candidate, this Braves team has high hopes they can surpass their NLDS finish. Do you think this Braves team has what it takes to make a push for the World Series with the roster they have heading into this season, Ryan?
I'm actually going to go with the Chicago Cubs in the NL. I think this team, they did what they needed to do this offseason. They brought back Bellinger to go around this core that they have of Swanson and Horner. Christopher Morel is kind of coming into his own. He's looked really good at a third base. He played well in the outfield last year, so he's kind of the utility player. They bring in Shota Imanaga. And then I think the biggest thing is bringing over Craig Counsell, a very experienced manager who led the division rival Brewers to multiple NL Central titles. And I think he's just going to be able to lead this team from a managerial perspective. Sometimes the manager makes a difference. I think in this case, he very much could. This Cubs team has some young players. They have some veterans. It's a perfect mix, and it's the kind of the recipe you look for when you're going into the playoffs and looking at World Series. It's a mix of kind of outside and inside players, veterans and young core. It's the perfect mix for a World Series run.
Yeah, well, I think that this Braves team, they didn't have to do much, but they did just enough. I mean, you have the core of Ronald Acuna Jr., Austin Riley, and Ozzie Albies in the lineup, and then Spencer Strider, Max Fried, Chris Sale that they just added. If he can stay healthy, that 1-2-3 punch can be one of, if not the best trio of pitchers in the MLB, and they had the best offense in the league during the regular season. It faded away in the playoffs, and that was their big issue. Consistency is a must this season for the Braves.
Well, everybody knows about the favorites to win the World Series this year, but which teams are flying under the radar? Last season's NL representatives, the Diamondbacks, are plus 4,000 to win the World Series. A team with a lot of big signings are the Giants, currently at plus 4,500. Ben, which team are your dark horse candidate to win the World Series?
I'm going to go with the Cleveland Guardians, and they're not the flashiest team. I mean, we know they have Jose Ramirez, who's always one of the top players in the MVP conversation year in and year out. But, I mean, you have guys like Andres Jimenez, Steven Kwan. They don't hit really hard, but they get that nice contact, spray it all over the field. And then you also have guys like Shane Bieber in the starting rotation, Tristan McKenzie, Emmanuel Clase closing down games. And, they have a lot of youth in that rotation. Tanner Bybee, I just mentioned, Tristan McKenzie. And then, of course, that veteran presence with Shane Bieber and Carlos Carrasco. A lot of help to these guys. And, they don't do it like other teams do it, but if they can take up those power numbers this season and really, generate more offense, this team could go a little bit further in the playoffs than they have in recent years.
For me, it's the Cincinnati Reds, the other Ohio team. I think in this case, you're betting on youth. Ellie De La Cruz came up in last season and looked like a superstar. Matt McClain looked really, really good in his time as well as Spencer Steer. They have a very young core. Not a lot of veterans, though, so you're betting on youth. Hunter Green has had flashes of excellence, and he could put it all together, be an ace. Andrew Abbott looked good, and they have Alexis Diaz, a very bona fide closer. I'm going to say it again, they're betting on youth, but if it all comes together, this team could be very, very scary in the NL this season.
With opening day around the corner, there are always a handful of teams that look primed for a World Series run after the offseason shakeup. Which teams from each league are your picks to make it to the Fall Classic, and who will come away victorious, Brian?
Well, of the two teams that I shed for the AL and NL, I'm going with the Cubs. I think if you do see an Orioles-Cubs matchup, I just think sometimes youth doesn't always get there with the Orioles. They have the veterans, but they're not a lot of playoff experience, which is going to hurt a bit. They got knocked out last year, and I think the Cubs have a lot more veterans. Bellinger's been to the World Series. Other players do it. Craig Counsell has just been a very good manager, and I think you saw it with the Brewers. They made some pretty deep NL runs last year, and I think with a better team and a better roster than I think he may have ever had that he did with the Brewers, I think of the two teams that I picked, the Cubs would be the team to win the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, going with the teams that I picked before for my favorites, the Rangers and the Braves. Rangers youth already having playoff experience. We saw Evan Carter absolutely go off in the fall last season. And now, you bring up a guy like Wyatt Langford. If he can really continue what he's done, this team is even better. And, he's really has a lot of valuable mentors in the lineup, Marcus Semien and Corey Seager, to really teach him what it's like to play in that sort of environment. And then, of course, the Braves. Consistency with that offense, really leading the league in offense all of last season, and then the playoffs it kind of disappeared. So if they can stay consistent and kind of continue to show that into the playoffs, I don't think they'll have any issue making their way all the way to the Fall Classic when it's all said and done. We're
going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue our talk about the MLB awards and get here on WTOP 10.
Say, President Stanley, whenever there's bad weather, who would you turn to?
I'd turn to Storm Team 10.
No, but you've got to say it like this. Storm Team 10. Say it with me. Storm Team 10.
Roll it.
Jill told me it was Kitty from Glee. Yeah, what is it?
It's Al Roker.
Welcome back to Stick to Sports. The American League Rookie of the Year award currently has one heavy favorite, last year's playoff breakout star Evan Carter of the Rangers. The Tigers' Colt Keith and Rays' Junior Caminero are players to watch, as well as another Oriole, Colton Cowser. With a few rookies set to make Major League rosters, who do you think is taking home this year's award?
I mean, you just talked about his teammate, but Wyatt Langford really, we've been talking about him a lot already in the show, but he's been really the talk of spring training and, just recently being named to the opening day roster of the Texas Rangers this spring, batting .362 with a .415 on-base percentage and a 1.122 OPS with 6 home runs and 20 RBIs just in spring alone. I mean, he really is showing off, like, every single tool that he has, and he was drafted just last year. He was the second pick of the 2023 draft. Really just a fantastic job by the Rangers to pick up this guy when they struggled the year before, and then to win the World Series right after drafting him. I mean, it's crazy. And in 44 games in the minor leagues, batting .360 with a .480 OPS and a 1.157 OPS, 10 home runs and 30 RBIs.
Well, I'm going with his teammate. I'm going with Evan Carter. I think his breakout last year is going to translate back into the regular season this year. He's going to be an everyday outfielder for them, and I think he is the guy to win the Rookie of the Year this year.
The National League has a lot of possible candidates for the Rookie of the Year heading into the 2024 season, with Jackson Chourio breaking camp with the Brewers and Shota Imanaga and Yoshinobu Yamamoto being strong choices as they already have professional experience. Brian, who's your pick for this year's NL Rookie of the Year?
Well, you just mentioned him, Jackson Chourio of the Brewers. He's a superstar coming out center fielder for the Brewers. This young Brewers core, I think, especially in the outfield, he's going to play really well. He's a top of the lineup guy. He'll have protection around him, and Yelich and Adames, also veterans. You can kind of teach him the ways of the game. And I just think he's this nice up and coming guy. We've been hearing about him for years. He's super young. I just think he has the potential and the pedigree to be the guy to take the award this year.
And I'm going to go with the Dodgers' new right-handed pitcher, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I mean, he's really struggled in spring, and then he struggled in his first start against the Padres in Korea. And so I think it's really just about him getting the feel for MLB baseballs, and then he'll be able to really get his control back because he'll start, really be comfortable with it. And once he gets that control back, he'll start hitting his spots more and making his off-speed pitches a little bit more effective, and he'll just be, he'll back to what everybody thinks he could be.
The American League is stacked with talent and got an influx of new stars during the offseason. The current favorite to win the MVP is Aaron Judge at +550, with new teammate Juan Soto right behind at +600. Ben, with the last year's winner Shohei Ohtani now in the NL, who do you think is taking home this year's AL MVP?
I mean, you named him. I mean, who else but Aaron Judge? I mean, last year he struggled with injuries. He just could not stay on the field. But he played in 106 games. He still hit 37 home runs and had 75 RBIs with a 1.019 OPS. I mean, you really can't ask for much more than that, especially when he's on the field. I mean, of course, he wasn't on the field much, but when he was always producing. And just if he stays healthy this season, I see no reason why he can't win MVP this year.
Well, I'm going to go with Corey Seager of the Rangers. He had an excellent year last year, and I think this year he could take another step. He has a lot of great players around him. We mentioned Wyatt Langford and Evan Carter. He's got Marcus Semien. And I think one thing you might see in New York is that Soto and Judge may take votes off of each other. They're both going to have very good years, and there's just a possibility of them both stealing votes. And I know people could say it was Semien and Seager, but I do think Seager's going to have a standout year over Semien, and that's not going to be necessarily a problem down in Texas where you could see it up in the Bronx.
The NL has a ton of MVP caliber talent, spanning from the reigning MVP Ronald Acuna Jr. to the reigning AL MVP Shohei Ohtani. But there are also breakout stars like Corbin Carroll, who showed a lot of promise in 2023. Brian, will this year's NL MVP be someone we expect like the two I just mentioned, or are we going to see a new face take home the award?
Well, I'm going with a new face, Corbin Carroll. He had a breakout year last year, won the NL Rookie of the Year award, and he honestly was kind of like an Acuna light. He had a very similar skill set, played excellent defense, stole bases, had power, kind of almost a five-tool player. I think one thing you can see, talk about Acuna going back-to-back, voter fatigue is a thing. If he has any of a lesser year this year than he did last year, then he's not going to garner the votes that he got because he has to be better than he was before to get the MVP back.
Absolutely, and I believe, Cody Bellinger, he finally was able to get a contract, and he went back to Chicago, and he's going to be proving teams again because he might be able to opt out. And last year he hit .307 with 26 home runs and 97 RBIs. If he can do that again, or even bolster that because now he's more comfortable being in Chicago, he could be at an elite level that we saw, I'd say about 5 years ago when he was with LA. So it's just a matter of time if we see what Cody Bellinger we get this season.
Last year's AL Cy Young Award winner Garrett Cole is set to miss 10 to 12 weeks, opening the door for a new winner in the AL this season. Current favorites include Kevin Gausman of the Blue Jays, Corbin Burnes now of the Orioles, and Luis Castillo of the Mariners. Ben, who do you think will take home this season's Cy Young Award?
I mean, Luis Castillo last season, he pitched 197 innings, and he had a 3.34 ERA. He was 5th in Cy Young voting, but that wasn't even his best. We've seen him have a higher ceiling or even better performance in past seasons. He got a little bit lucky, so I feel like that's why he didn't do as well, because he was getting a little bit more contact. If he can sort of try and avoid the barrel a little bit more, even if they're still making contact, but as long as it's softer contact, he might have a little more success this season.
Well, I'm going to go with this teammate, George Kirby, an up-and-coming pitcher, also in the Mariners rotation. They have a lot of young pitchers, but I think George Kirby may be the standout this year from that rotation. He can kind of prove himself as an ace. He has a very good pitch mix, extremely good control, does not walk anybody, and I do think that similar to what we saw last year with Garrett Cole, just command and overpowering. George Kirby, very similar pitcher. I think he's going to be the guy that wins the Cy Young in the AL this year.
With Blake Snell staying in the National League after a long free agent saga, he is back in the running for the Cy Young Award. Corbin Burns moving to the American League opens up opportunities for new faces to possibly take home the hardware. Who is your NL Cy Young pick, Brian?
I'm going to go with Max Fried of the Atlanta Braves. Max Fried has shown that he is a Cy Young caliber pitcher year in and year out. He just deals with injuries every year. He has to stay healthy on this Braves team, but if he continues to be the ace of a Braves team that wins over 100 games repeatedly, at some point he's going to garner the votes, as long as he stays healthy, to be that guy, win the NL Cy Young, and just he has shown the numbers, shown the abilities. It's going to be him, I think, this year's it.
I think it's possibly going to be Logan Webb. I mean, we know that he just got Blake Snell as a teammate. That duo is going to be one of the best in the MLB. But, I mean, he finished second place in the NL Cy Young voting last year behind Snell, and he's shown a ton of progression year over year since his rookie season. So I see no reason why he can't take another leap and win the award. But pitching to a 3.25 ERA last season in 216 innings, striking out 194 batters, he's been fantastic. And I don't see any reason why he can't be even more fantastic in 2024. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Brian will be joined by one of our producers, Alex Brooks, here on WTOP 10.
Would you like to try snacks from faraway lands? Or snacks with bizarre flavors? How about snacks in new ways? Or snacks you've never tried before? You don't have to go far to find these snacks. They can all be found here at Snacks on West 1st Street.
Yeah, we're walking around campus, and what do we see?
All these clubs are looking.
They looking for me.
There's hockey,
There's improv,
so much to see. So let's go try them out and see how they be. Come on and please watch.
Our embarrassments free.
Tune in to Amateurs on WTOP.
Happy Friday, Lakers, and another beautiful day here in Oswego, New York. I'm DJ Don Perone, and I'm happy that you're starting your weekend off right listening to WNYO 88.9 FM, the Laker Radio Network.
I said, darling, can you see? There's no room for us. There's no room. Now our lives are changing. Promises keep slipping. And I always knew it wasn't you. It wasn't you. Now our lives are changing. Promises keep slipping. And I always knew it wasn't you. It wasn't you.
First, one of our producers, Alice, what do you got for us tonight?
Well, Brian, we'll start this fast break not on the diamond, but on the gridiron, as the NFL has announced some controversial rule changes, including a ban on the hip drop tackles that has had defensive players voice their opinions on social media. Brian, in the wake of these rule changes, will these be good or bad for the league moving forward?
Well, I think the hip drop tackle is bad. I think just the amount of we've seen of players complaining about it, we've seen media talking about it. I know it's dangerous. I know it's caused some injuries, but you know what? That's the risk of being in the NFL is you're going to get injured. It's the very contact-heavy sport. You have to kind of deal with things certain times. And the hip drop tackle is just kind of one of those things. You're just taking away players' abilities to really tackle players in the open field. They're just, every year, there's something new that the defensive players can't do. Eventually, we're playing flag football. That's what I'm going to say. Eventually, it's flag football out here.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that. I mean, the hip drop tackle has been the hip drop tackle, was overshadowed by the first two rules because the commitment to safety for the NFL is kind of going overboard right now. I mean, you were mentioning with being flag football. I mean, all these guys are really going back and forth on social media, not really liking these rules. And this is a game that's meant to be physical. We've seen a lot of commitment to safety, and it's really going a lot overboard for the NFL. Moving back to the national pastime, as opening day is only 3 days away, with Thursday marking the start of the 2024 season. 12 teams made the playoffs that excluded the Yankees, Mets, and Red Sox. Brian, I'll ask you the question. What team that made the 2023 playoffs will not make it to the dance in 2024?
I'm going to go with the Milwaukee Brewers. They lost Craig Counsell. They really didn't make a lot of big splashes in free agency to counteract some of the loss of Counsell. They're kind of going with a youth movement here with Churio coming up and Joey Weimer and a couple other young outfielders. And I just think they need a season to reset. The NL Central is getting better with the Reds up and coming, the Cubs really showing up, and the Cardinals still available, and they made moves this offseason. I think that it's the Brewers' year to just kind of take a step back and really kind of reset before they make a push again for the playoffs in maybe a year or two.
Yeah, I agree with you. For my team is going to be the Toronto Blue Jays in the AL East. I feel like they're going to miss the playoffs because I feel like just the expectations you've had from this team. They're a young team. You got Guerrero, you got Bichette, you got guys who are supposed to be taking over the league, supposed to be competing for a championship, and that's been not the case. I mean, you obviously have the Yankees retooling. You know, the Red Sox, they've been low in the division, but they're always competitive. And obviously the Orioles and Rays have been really competitive in this division. So they haven't really made any splash free agent moves. They lost out on Bellinger, they lost out on Ohtani, and it's not going to help them out going into 2024. I know you guys talked about your AL and NL rookie predictions. We'll expand on that idea. Brian, it's late March, but who is your prospect to watch that could have an impact in the majors down the stretch in 2024?
I'm going to go with Paul Skeens, the #1 overall pick by the Pirates in the last draft in the summer. He's just this overwhelming pitcher, constantly over 100 with his fastball. All the scouts love him. You see he's ranked #3 in the MLB by MLB Pipeline. He's just 21 years old. He's starting in AAA, so it's just one jump to the majors. I don't think it'll be long. The Pirates are still this team that are kind of rebuilding. They have some players, but I think it's just another year for them. And I think we're going to see Skeens probably maybe late May, early June, especially if he's dealing in AAA.
Yeah, I'm going to go for my player to watch. I didn't plan this. His name is Brooks Lee, the shortstop from the Minnesota Twins. He was drafted 8th overall in 2022 by Minnesota. I mean, you mentioned with Skeens, he's a guy who Minnesota is growing to be that second baseman. He's listed as a shortstop, but he's going to be that second baseman with Carlos Correa. He's reassigned to AAA. He had a great camp. I mean, he was batting over 300. He had a lot of extra base hits, 4 RBIs. He'll be someone to watch come into this season.
We're going to take a quick break here on Stick to Sports. Thanks once again to Alex for the fast break. When we come back, Ben, Alex, and I will head into extra innings. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Stick to Sports on WTOP 10.
What's going on?
Yeah, we go on at like 11:30. It's like
no.
What do you mean no?
It's 10:30.
10:30?
Yeah, it's 10:30.
What do you mean it's 10:30?
Hey, don't touch that. That's my ladder.
Hey, man.
Whoa.
You know this book was already discounted 10%?
Wow. Get a close up of that one.
Matthew,
Look at that.
Can we go back inside? I want to sleep in the studio again.
We'll deep dive into our feelings in our Real Talk segment. Stay tuned because it's about to get real.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Welcome back to Major Discussions.
Welcome back to Stick to Sports. Now let's get ready for everyone's favorite tradition here at WTOP 10, extra innings. Let's take a look at the updated extra innings standings. And guys, I mean, Ben, look at you, 5-0.
There we go.
I went up there 4-1.
Finally. We finally beat Brian.
We finally beat him.
And yet I'm still over 500,
did.
so don't get too ahead of yourselves. But no, congrats. I think this is the second 5-0 we've had in the 2 seasons we've been doing this. Congrats.
Thank you.
Good job.
Congrats, Ben.
Thank you.
Well, the first matchup for this opening day baseball edition of Stick to Sports is going to be the Milwaukee Brewers versus the New York Mets at Citi Field with an even spread. Ben, you went undefeated last week, so I'll have you start off.
Yeah, this is a really interesting matchup. I mean, it's Freddie Peralta against Jose Quintana in the opening day matchup. Not exactly what you were expecting coming into the season, especially at the end of last season, maybe Corbin Burns and Kodai Senga. That is not the case. Corbin Burns, of course, in Baltimore, and Kodai Senga is hurt at the moment. But I think going into this one, I got to go with the Brewers. I want to see Jackson Chourio really, turn it up in his first game action in the MLB and give the Brewers a 1-0 record to start the season.
Despite it being Quintana on the mound, I'm going to go against you and think Citi Field home advantage for the Mets opening day. They're going to get their own fans there to really build them up. I think they're a team that's really going to need it, and they're going to feed off the Citi Field crowd and take the win in the first game.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Brian. I'm going to take the New York Mets at home at Citi Field. Our next game is a rematch of the 2023 National League Division Series, Atlanta Braves versus the Philadelphia Phillies. Brian, which NL East team is taking the first W?
Well, the Braves are favored despite being on the road, but I'm going to still go with them. I think they're just overpowering. I think the Phillies, they tend to struggle a little bit in the regular season, but they do enough to make the postseason. I know we're just opening day, and I don't know why I'm talking about postseason yet, but I do think it's going to be the Braves taking this opening day game in Philly.
I'm going to go against you on this one. We know that Phillies have a really good track record against Spencer Strider, and that's, of course, who they're facing in the opening day matchup. So I'm going to take the Phillies, and I think they're going to do pretty well against Strider.
Brian, did I copy off your notes? Because I'm taking the Braves as well in this matchup. So the next one is going to be the Blue Jays versus the Rays, two AL East teams. Ben, which team are you taking the opening day win?
Without Glass now for opening day, I think the Blue Jays are going to take this one. They have Kevin Gausman getting the start, and I mean, as we talked about before, he's one of those guys for the Cy Young this season, and I think he's gonna propel them to the victory.
I'm going to go with you on the Blue Jays. I think this team is pretty good. The Rays are still kind of this team that isn't really they're dealing with Wander Franco. That's what I'm trying to get to. And I think the Blue Jays with Kevin Gausman, Cy Young candidate, is going to lead them to victory.
And I'm going to take the Rays. So this next matchup is going to be that Yankee fans always dread, Astros, Yankees. Brian, you're the non-Yankee fan at this table. Who we got here?
I'm going with the Astros. Nestor Cortez on the bump opening day. I just don't think he'll be able to deal with the pressure in Houston. I think that's the biggest deal. Is Cortez in Houston opening day is not going to go well. Give me the Astros.
You know what? I'm going with the Yankees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, get
Shock.
faked. You got faked. I'm going with the Yankees.
Oh, I'm so surprised.
In the beginning of this, I was going to go with you, Brian, on the Astros, but screw that. I'm going to go to the New York Yankees. Yankees are going to win this matchup. Let's go. Our final matchup is an intriguing one with the rising Chicago Cubs headed to face the defending World Series champion Texas Rangers. Ben, who's winning on primetime?
I talked a lot about the Rangers before. I'm taking the Rangers this one. Their lineup is just too good. And, they got Evaldi as well, and he's been really strong.
Yeah, I'm right with you on the Rangers. I think Eovaldi on the bump. This lineup is just too good. They're at home. If this is going to be the World Series, like the crowd on the World Series team, give me the Rangers.
Yeah, the defending World Series champion Rangers are going to take it in this one.
And that's all the time we have on this episode of Stick to Sports. Be sure to tune in next week right here on WTOP 10.